Welcome, everybody. I want to thank Luke for inviting me to come and speak to you today. Kind of put together some slides, but I'd like to just kind of give you a condensed version on how I got to this stage and how plant medicines helped find something in myself that I didn't know existed and how it changed my life. So I got out of the Marine Corps in 2005. I had just got back from the Second Battle of Fallujah, had a traumatic brain injury, and did not want to live. I had seen the worst of humanity, and it was very hard for me to come back home. I was very misunderstood. I was struggling with they call moral injury, so taking another life. I was still trying to unpack what that meant. And I came home an atheist, which was really, really interesting for me. I grew up in the Catholic Church, went to private school for the majority of my upbringing. I was an altar boy, did all the things, and I was convinced that I had been lied to my entire life. And where I went, I absolutely believe I was in hell. So I went into the VA system, and they started to give me a lot of different pharmaceuticals to treat my symptoms, what I was feeling, what I was not understanding, trying to give me Ambien so I could sleep. They were addressing my PTS and my depression with antidepressants and benzos. And they gave me Oxycontin for pain. I'm here to tell you, I became addicted very quickly and used Oxycontin as an escape. So once as a squad leader of a small group of Marines in Iraq, I found myself homeless under a bridge in New York City with very little remembrance about the great things and the courageous things that I had done overseas. Turned to alcohol and substance, and I started to fill my life with just escapes. Relationships, toxic relationships, substances. I didn't know how to feel. And I didn't know there wasn't anybody, I was really coming out of in that first wave of veterans in 2005. I was lacking one thing, my community. I didn't have anybody up there in New York that I could talk to about this. I didn't trust doctors. I didn't trust psychologists or therapists. And so I was able to get on my feet, and I had about a 9-year career on Wall Street. Started to find some purpose again in my life. And I moved back to Texas, and I became a firefighter for the city of Austin. I am messing this up. Oh, you're good. So I really wanted to get back to service, and so I became a firefighter for the city of Austin. And I'm here to tell you that I didn't understand human suffering until I became a first responder. It was a little different when I'm trying to kill a bad guy that's trying to kill me and my buddies. But working downtown Austin, I worked at Central Station right up the road here. I saw human suffering daily. And I started to spiral out. I was part of a culture that men didn't talk about their feelings. Men didn't cry. Men didn't feel and were open about it. And so in 2018, I attempted to kill myself in the parking lot of that station. I was unsuccessful. I took some time away, and I read a book, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Maybe some of you have heard or read that book before. And it gave me a glimpse into maybe there's some other tools out there that I should look into. And so I started to explore in 2018 mushrooms. Now, this is before the topic of this is how to make this an option. I didn't know this was an option. I didn't know this was an option when I was wanting to kill myself, leave my 4-year-old and 1-year-old behind, right? I just wanted the pain to stop. That's all I wanted. And I didn't have any other option to take other than death. I definitely didn't know how to live. And so I started to work with mushrooms in 2018. And I remember that first experience of mine, I was scared. I didn't know much about mushrooms. I've heard about them. But I was scared. I was scared of what I would see, what I would re-experience. And I'll tell you, 6 hours later, after that first ever journey, I loved myself again. I was proud of myself again. And I didn't want to die. I can tell you this, that I wasn't an atheist any longer. I believed in something greater than myself. I felt connected with something greater than myself. But I didn't understand what that was. Now, I believe we have a much bigger crisis than a mental health crisis here in America. I believe we have a spiritual crisis. I believe people are lacking purpose. I believe people are lacking connection with themselves and with each other. And I started to work with different medicines that are found from around the world over the next few years. And it was giving me insights, downloads. You know, we are in an age of forgetting. That's what we are in. With the influx of information, social media, we're just receiving. I started to remember how to live. I remembered how to love, how to receive love, how to give love. And by doing this, it improved every relationship that I was ever having with people. I became a better father. I became a better husband. I became a better friend. I became a better friend to me. And so all of these, I'm here to tell you that these medicines, these natural medicines, and we'll go into, I believe, you know, back in 1970 when Nixon created the Controlled Substance Act and removed all of these medicines from us. For those that believe in God in this room, well, God is nature. God created all of this for those believers. God created those medicines for us. And the government removed God from our lives. And it's continued to remove God from our lives and our schools and our books. And I'm here to tell you that these medicines allowed me to have knowledge that God exists, in my belief. It allowed me to experience the divine within myself. And this was a humongous polarity of coming home an atheist. To have this understanding that there is something more to this experience that we're living on earth right now. And so these medicines are not panacea. They are not a end-all be-all. I assure you, I've had challenging days since that very first mushroom ceremony that I facilitated for myself. But I'm just better equipped to deal with them. I was able to go back and re-experience traumatic events in my life and have grace for those experiences. I was able to grieve the losses of my friends. I've had 15 friends commit suicide that I've served with since 2005 who didn't have an option. They didn't know this existed because up until now, these conversations happening, up until recent years, people had to travel outside of America to work with these medicines because they've been demonized. They've been said to be illegal. They've been removed from humanity, as Americans go, and our culture. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. American veterans who fought for freedom don't have the freedom to use natural occurring substances on American soil. How twisted is that? So they're going to second and third world countries for help. And I'm like, well, we have got to fix that. And as you know from Dr. Fonzo, this is a slow burn on the research angle. Now it's needed because I'm here to tell you the DEA and the federal government is not going to come out on the podium and be like, hey guys, we screwed up. We made a mistake. We should have never classified these as Schedule 1 in 1970. They're not going to do that. So we do need research to push the ball across the finish line, right? And it's important, and I support it. But people do not have 10 plus years. People are suffering now. People are dying now. We're losing anywhere from 22 to 44 veterans a day to suicide, depending on what paper you're reading. One's too many. Think about all that generational trauma of the child who's like, I wasn't good enough for my dad, so my dad killed himself. Right? People need hope. And so what I did is I teamed up with a really smart group of lawyers, and I wanted to be able to bring these medicines here to America under a religious exemption. Now, I don't consider myself religious, I'm spiritual. I think this is something that, needs to probably be updated in the law on what spirituality is, so it's inclusive of spirituality. But we have, in the First Amendment, free exercise of religion and spiritual practices. In 1993, the federal government came out with specific language, also kind of updating that law to make sure people were protected without interference of the government to practice their own religion, whatever that looks like for you. The state of Texas did it in 1999. So I created an entheogenic church here, a sanctuary. It's located just outside of Austin in Dripping Springs. And I started it for veterans and first responders. And I was just tired of my friends dying. I didn't want to get those calls anymore. It was heartbreaking to listen to my buddy's wife say that Joe wasn't around. Joe gave up. Joe lost the battle. Having to see these families at funerals, the kids questioning why they weren't good enough for their dad to stay around. And it happens every single hour. And so I believe, as a former Marine and a former firefighter, that we have got to do better as a country to thank these individuals for service. And so we developed a 21-week program for those individuals to find purpose again. People ask what I do for a living, and I say, well, I create containers for people to feel and process their emotions. Because most of these individuals don't have the tools to process their emotions. And so we developed a program because without the proper preparation and integration support for an individual, all it is an experience. I can assure you that your life will not change. Now, there is a period of neuroplasticity with all of these medicines that you can reprogram the program, you can create new habits, you can get rid of some bad habits or some old habits that you don't want to bring into the new chapter, and your brain is in a very flexible state, but it's going to harden again. And so we created this program of 8 weeks of preparation and 12 weeks of integration to support veterans and first responders in coming home. Now, all of these medicines that I've worked with, I've learned different things from them. Every ceremony, every journey has been different for me. I've learned different insights. I am literally 4 days out of an ayahuasca retreat. Second time sitting with that medicine, a profound experience for me. And it's these medicines, these teachers, I like to consider them teachers. And it's very hard because I know big pharma's coming. Everybody's trying to synthesize these medicines. But I believe in the synthesization of medicine, you're lacking the spirit that comes with these ancestral medicines. There's something to it. I would have never talked like this 7 years ago. But I'm telling you guys that there's something more out there. These medicines have been used for millennia in spiritual, religious ceremonies of community-based healing models, naturally. Now, I know we're trying to, in America, since we're having to engineer this backwards, well, all right, well, this treats that, and this treats that, and that treats that. What if these medicines just allowed you to have a better relationship with yourself? And all those other symptoms went away. That's what I believe happens. I was able to love myself. It started with me. We don't give ourselves enough credit about how much knowledge is stored in our bodies. We're always trying to look externally for all the answers. And I tell you, in these ceremonies, you strap on some headphones, put on a sleep mask, you're going to figure out quickly all the answers are within yourself already. And these medicines, these catalysts, dig all those answers up for you. Now, is it hard? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard work. You know what's also hard? Wanting to die. So which heart are you going to pick? I choose life. And I haven't been on a pharmaceutical since 2018. And I feel more alive today than I've ever felt before. So I think for the legal landscape, this is it's an uphill battle. We have a lot of work to do. Oregon and Colorado have made these legal, but with a ton of restrictions on treatment centers, and it's expensive. Very expensive. But it's a step in the right direction. And what's interesting about Oregon and Colorado is because they're going against federal law. They're still federally illegal unless you are operating under a religious exemption. But the DEA and the federal government don't want to touch this. Now, me as a spiritual community, I feel very safe where we're at. Not only because of Texas and the work we're doing and my political allies, but the DEA is batting 0% when they have brought suit against churches, religious or spiritual communities. They're batting 0. Because the burden of proof, what makes it my religious practice or spiritual practice, is the fact that I believe in it. You know how hard that is to disprove? I think it's impossible. And so the DEA is turning it onto the state government to enforce this, and no one wants to touch it because all it does is take one trial to create case law. And once there's case law, well, that law is going to be cited forever. And we're going to see spiritual communities popping up left and right. I believe people don't feel connected. We're looking for gratification on social media. We're looking for, there's more to life than the nice cars and the nice houses. There's something deeper. out there. And I encourage you all to reflect on maybe ways that you can be more connected in your life and you can help leave an impact and make this world a better place for our children's children. So well, that's not going to work. We can, so there are different advocacy organizations if you'd like to support the advocacy and legislation. There's a lot of groups out of DC. We have a great group here, Texans for Greater Mental Health, the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition, VETS, Veteran Mental Health Leadership Coalition. They are currently trying to pioneer new legislation. It is a long, slow burn, but it's a step in the right direction. Like we said, research, it's very important. We need it. It's the only way that these medicines are going to come off. But it takes about $150 to $300 million to go from phase 1 out of phase 3. A lot of money. And most of this funding has been coming from philanthropic efforts. So I really call the governments, the federal government, the state governments, to really start pitching into the fight to end suicide and to allow these people to start to heal. So you guys, if anybody's interested, we'll leave this QR code up. This is a way that you can reach out to the organization. I started to offer this to the general public this year. So if anybody is looking for change, maybe some transformation in their life, if they have questions that they want to learn more about these medicines and our approach, please do reach out. I'm excited to announce that June 1st, we'll be bringing Ibogaine to America. So thank you. We brought on, we'll be treating addiction as well as TBI for our great American people. If you guys have any questions, please do reach out. If you'd like to help a veteran or first responder come through this program, please reach out. Thank you for listening today, and God bless.